Welcome to another episode of Riding and Wrenching, the biggest little YouTube channel on the entire interwebs. I am your host, Q the Rider, and in this episode, I'm going to do a comparison between my J&S motorcycle lift and my brand new motorcycle lift from Harbor Freight. Now, I purchased a second motorcycle lift because I've got two motorcycles, and sometimes I end up with three motorcycles in my garage, and it's just handy to have more than one lift. So I thought that I would offer some content for you if you're trying to decide on a motorcycle lift which one is better for you. So what I've done, I put together a comparison chart, and we're going to rate both lifts on a number of different categories. We're going to rate them on the looks and design, the dimensions, the lift height, lift mechanism, the safety, maneuverability, the different functions and uses that you can do with the lift, accessories, price, and finally availability. So let's get into it. So the first category we're going to talk about is looks and design. The J&S Jack is all black. It's a very industrial looking lift. It's big. I store mine underneath my toolbox, but it can sometimes be, it won't go all the way under the toolbox because it's just it's a bigger lift. The Harbor Freight Jack, by comparison, is a lower profile design. It looks phenomenal. It has two colors. It has a blue, a nice looking blue, as well as a stainless steel or gray looking color. It's a really nice looking lift, but a pretty lift I really don't care about. I want to know how good of a job does it do lifting my bike. And that's what we're going to find out today. Now, when it comes to the overall engineering of the lift, I honestly like the Harbor Freight lift better. It looks solid. And as you're going to see when we talk about some of the other issues on here, it's just a very solid, tight looking lift, which is surprising because Harbor Freight gets trashed on the quality of their tools. But I can just tell you from my limited use with the Harbor Freight Jack so far, it's designed very, very well. But I'm not sure that its design elements elevate it past the more industrial looking J&S Jack. So we're going to rate both of these lifts a 1 in that category. Now, the next thing that we're going to talk about is the actual dimensions of the lift. And what I mean by that is the footprint, or the part of the lift that actually makes contact with the bike as it lifts it up. So for the J&S Jack, the footprint of the J&S Jack, it's 16 inches by 16 inches, roundabouts. The Harbor Freight Jack, on the other hand, is about 12 by 12, so it's much smaller. And what that equates to is stability when you're lifting. When you're lifting the J&S, or lifting your motorcycle with the J&S Jack, it's a lot more solid and it doesn't wobble as much. It does wobble, it just does not wobble as much as the Harbor Freight Jack. When you lift with the Harbor Freight Jack, it's wobbling while it's lifting, and it's very wobbly while it's in the air. In fact, the owner's manual for the Harbor Freight Jack advises you to strap the bike down once you have it lifted. Now, I will tell you from my experience with my J&S Jack, I've never strapped it down. They don't recommend it. There are some cases where you might want to strap it down. For instance, if you're going to remove saddlebags or remove tires or something like that, you're altering the weight balance of the bike. Now, I've used my J&S Jack for tire changes, never had a problem with it, but it's just something that you need to be aware of. With that Harbor Freight Jack, on the other hand, it wobbles so much, I would be very, very cautious about altering the weight balance of that bike while it's lifted. So based on my experience, I'm going to give the J&S Jack a 2 with dimensions because that larger lifting base or the lifting footprint just makes it much more stable and safer, in my opinion. Next up is lift height. So I did a comparison with both jacks with them without a bike as well as lifting it with a bike. There is about a 3/4 of an inch lifting advantage with the Harbor Freight Jack over the J&S Jack. That 3/4 of an inch is not enough to make a difference in real world use. Now, the J&S Jack should actually win this category hands down because it has 5 notches that the safeties can rest in while it's lifting. Unfortunately, my J&S Jack will only go to the 3rd notch, which limits its lift height. I have used other J&S Jacks which can use all 5 of the notches, and you get a few more inches of lift height with those extra notches. I can't explain to you why mine won't go any higher. I've tried to bleed the fluid. I've replaced the fluid. I've done everything that I can do. It won't go beyond that 3rd notch. So there's a limitation with the bottle jack on my J&S Jack. So based on that, they're both going to be rated a 1. Next, we're going to talk about the lifting mechanism itself. The J&S Jack is lifted with a foot pump. So it's a lot easier on the body. It frees up your hand so that you can place one hand on the bike and one on the jack, or both hands on the bike, whichever you prefer, but you're just a lot more stable lifting with the J&S Jack. The Harbor Freight Jack is designed like a typical automotive floor jack. It's hand pump, and it takes some effort to get that bike in the air. In fact, a smaller statured person is probably going to have to use both hands to lift their bike with the Harbor Freight Jack. So based on that, we're going to give the Harbor Freight Jack a 1 and a 2 for the J&S Jack. Next, we're going to talk about the safety mechanism. And so what I call the safety mechanism is what you use to take the pressure off of the bottle jack. You don't want to have all of the weight on the bottle jack the entire time. You want to use the bottle jack for lifting and lowering the bike. To keep it in the air, you want to use those 2 safeties, or the safeties on either lift. But there's a difference in how the safeties function between these 2 lifts. The J&S has 2 safeties, one on the left, one on the right, and you have to engage both of them. You have to manually engage and disengage them. The Harbor Freight Jack, on the other hand, that safety engages it engages automatically as you start to lift the bike. You don't have to do anything to engage the safeties, and it's really nice. It's solid. It's a one-piece operation. Now, you do have to manually disengage it in order to lower the bike, but once you've completely lowered the lift, the safety re-engages automatically, so that the next time you go to lift, again, it does it automatically. So it's a much better designed system on that Harbor Freight Jack. And so the Harbor Freight Jack is going to get a 2 in this category. I really love the design and the safety, and we're going to give a 1 to the J&S Jack because they work, but it requires manual intervention. Next, we're going to talk about maneuverability. Big difference between the 2 lifts here. The J&S Jack, if you watched any of their videos, they pride themselves on showing how you can maneuver the bike around. It can function as a dolly. And that's all because of the wheel, or the casters. They'll probably have bearings. They're just heavy duty, heavyweight casters that allow for easy maneuvering of the bike. The Harbor Freight Jack, on the other hand, the owner's manual says don't use it or do not maneuver the bike while it's lifted. So in other words, you need to have the bike or move the bike wherever you need it to be and then lift it. With the J&S Jack, I can pick the bike up anywhere, spin it around, and move it any place I want. So there's a big advantage with the J&S Jack over the Harbor Freight Jack. So the J&S Jack is going to get a 2. The Harbor Freight Jack will get a 1. Actually, no, correction. The Harbor Freight Jack is going to get a 0 for maneuverability because you can't do it. Next up, the different functions and uses that you can do with the jack. Now, this is a key metric, and it really depends on you, on what you want your jack for. If you want a jack that you can use as a lift, a dolly, you could do a variety of different maintenance things with it. Or if you want to maneuver an inoperable motorcycle, you can do all of those things with the J&S Jack. The Harbor Freight Jack, you can lift the bike, and that's about it. Now, the Harbor Freight Jack, you can do an oil change with it. However, because of the design of the base or the footprint of the jack, there's a cross member there that prevents you from accessing the primary oil drain plug. You can still drain the primary. You'll just have to do it with the bike sitting on a jiffy stand. Drain your primary fluid, reinstall the drain plug. You're going to have to lift the bike to put new primary fluid in. So you can do an oil change with the Harbor Freight Jack, and I'm going to produce a video here, and I'll put that out in a couple of weeks, and you'll get to see how to use the Harbor Freight Jack to do an oil change. The J&S Jack, it's easy because of the better design of the base and footprint. But the reason that we buy one of these jacks as a lift, and so the Harbor Freight Jack can do that, so we're going to give it a 1, but we're going to give the J&S Jack a 2 because of the multiple functions that you can do with it compared to the Harbor Freight Jack. Accessories. If you look on the J&S website, there are a number of different accessories that you can get with the lift. You can buy a handle, you can get an oil change funnel. There are different attachments you can get for the J&S Jack that allow you to lift different types of motorcycles. There is a dolly attachment. There are just so many different accessories that are available with the J&S Jack. The Harbor Freight Jack, what you see is what you get. There are no accessories with the Jack. It does come with a handle, so that's nice. In fact, it wouldn't work without a handle because that's the lifting mechanism. So you really don't get any accessories, and there's none available with the Harbor Freight Jack. Harbor Freight does sell motorcycle dollies. They don't get particularly great reviews, but you can get one of those. So there just aren't very many accessories available with the Harbor Freight Jack. But because it comes with a handle that you pay extra for with the J&S Jack, we're going to give the Harbor Freight Jack a 1, and the J&S Jack will get a 2 for accessories. Now, the last 2 categories. This is where the rubber meets the road. Price. The J&S Jack, I paid about $700. I think the prices have gone up a little bit. My Harbor Freight Jack, I paid $225. Big difference. However, if you consider the fact that you get more use out of the J&S Jack than you do out of the Harbor Freight Jack, the price difference kind of balances out a little bit. The Harbor Freight Jack is still cheaper no matter what. And if those extra functions that you get with the Harbor Freight Jack the extra functions that you get with the J&S Jack, if those don't have a value for you, then the Harbor Freight Jack is the much better buy. If you have a small garage like I do and you're like to work on your own bike, you're going to be maneuvering around bikes that are immobile, then the J&S Jack is a better deal because I don't need extra equipment to do the same function. So it really depends on what you're going to use your jack for to determine whether or not it's a good price or not. But even then, the J&S Jack, we're going to rate that a 1, and the Harbor Freight Jack is going to be rated a 2 just because it's just so much cheaper. Availability. Hands down, Harbor Freight Jack wins this category. You can go in any Harbor Freight anywhere in the country and buy one of these jacks today. I went in on a Saturday, their jack was sitting on the shelf, I picked it up, and I took it home. So the Harbor Freight Jack will get a 2. The J&S Jack, on the other hand, if you want a J&S Jack, you can only order them online. And online, I believe it says a 12 to 14 week delivery period. However, if you look at some of the comments that people have made on a variety of motorcycle forums, people are complaining that it's taken 4 to 6 months to get a J&S Jack. And they don't provide a lot of feedback. They don't respond to emails. They don't answer the phone anymore. I don't know what's going on with J&S. I will tell you, I love my J&S Jack. When I ordered mine a couple of years ago, I actually called and one of the owners answered the phone, spoke to him for half an hour. I had a great conversation with the guy, but something's going on with J&S and I don't know what it is. And I have to give them a 0 with availability because it's so hard to get them. All right, so where does that leave us with the scoring? So the J&S Jack, that's 6, 7, and 6 is 13. 1 is 14 points. And the Harbor Freight Jack will get us 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 points. So there you go. The big difference between the two is obviously price and functionality. The J&S Jack, for my use, is the better jack for me. I will use the Harbor Freight Jack only if I'm using both jacks at the same time or I have more than one bike in here. The Harbor Freight Jack is good for lifting. I feel perfectly comfortable doing it or using the Harbor Freight Jack for lifting. There's no qualms whatsoever about lifting my $30,000 motorcycle with a $200 jack. It is designed exceptionally well, and if you buy one, you'll like it. There's nothing to dislike about it. It just has limitations due to the way it's designed. If they were to put different casters on it, it would roll better. If they designed it so it had a little bit wider footprint, it would be a lot more stable. There's little things that Harbor Freight could do to make their jack phenomenal. And if they did that, I think it would beat the J&S Jack hands down. But for the way it's designed today, the J&S Jack is the superior jack if you're going to use all of the extra functions. I hope this video helps you with your purchase decision. If it did, leave me a comment, give me a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. Also, stand by for a video on how to do an oil change with the Harbor Freight Jack. Now, I've already produced a video on how to do an oil change with the J&S Jack. I'll provide a link to that right here. This is Q. I'm riding, I'm wrenching, and I am out.